Okay, so Corinne, thank you so much for coming to this session this evening. And today, Corinne is going to share her experience, strength, and hope on interracial sponsorship. So take it away, Corinne.
Okay, so yeah, my name is Corinne. I'm an addict, and I'm also what I would describe as cross-addicted, and have been in recovery for 25 years. I celebrated 25 years of recovery back in May on the 19th. So basically I've been coming to meetings and been engaging in the sponsorship process for all that time, and I've had various sponsors over the time, and I've had lots of different experiences. I mean, when I thought about kind of this, speaking, I was looking back, and the one thing that kind of stuck out for me was when I got clean originally and into recovery back in 1994, there was no black women in my locality and in the fellowship that I was attached to in recovery around my addiction that was available to sponsor me. I would have maybe have had to go to America or into the other fellowships to find somebody, a woman of colour. I know that the women of colour in the recovery kind of movement here in the UK were very few and far between back in those days. So I had to make a decision about getting a sponsor. But the thing that I think that was kind of like really useful for me was that there was a black male in fellowship at the time, and he was the person who I believe God used to kind of bring me to meetings, because there was somewhere in there that I believe that my kind of higher power, God knew that there wasn't going to be a lot of black people there, and I was very kind of much aware of myself in terms of race and racism, and to go into an environment that was predominantly white and stick around and survive would have been difficult if I didn't have like a really strong black role model there for me at the time, albeit it was periodic. I think it had a lot to do with me being able to stay in recovery in those early days. And they also spoke a lot about racism and race, and I believe that it happened for a reason, and I was able to kind of speak to him a lot in the early days, real lot of kind of contact, going to meetings. I met other people, and what I had to do is I had to find somebody from a different cultural background to sponsor me, and I managed to find somebody who was a punk rocker. And I remember she had all these cats, and I remember going to her house, and as a black woman thinking, oh God, man, there was cats and there was like teacups, and I was thinking, why? I thought to myself, all I want is a step work. I don't want a cup of tea, and I saw the cats everywhere. I was like, no, we didn't really roll like this where I come from. But to be fair, I managed to work with her, and I managed to get what I needed from her. And it was useful for me to look back and see that even though there was a lot of differences within us culturally, and I had, what was important for me was to have somewhere to talk about this stuff, and to have someone to talk about this stuff with, and to have someone who I could culturally identify with. I didn't have the kind of the luxury of being able to choose. There was one other woman who was mixed heritage, and she was like 6 months cleaner than me. So we both were really quite new. And then there was a little handful, maybe 5 black men in the meetings. That's back in 1994. Wow. And so we didn't have a lot of choice. We didn't have a lot of understanding. So we basically went into recovery. It was a white world. It was dominated by white people. There was different classes of people, depending on what type of part of London you went to. So if you went to West London, that'd be quite snobby and very white, and then if you went to East London, it'd be very kind of sort of like Cockney. So you think that, where do you fit in? So for me to have someone black around talk about that stuff, and I came in with all my kind of feelings around rape and racism. I had to kind of navigate that stuff as well as stay clean and sober, you know, because I came in addicted to crack cocaine and heroin, and then my addiction went into other areas: food, relationships, money. I've had recovery in all those areas, and I've had a variety of different types of sponsors. So anyway, I worked with this woman for about, I think I stayed with her for 9 years, if I'm slightly sure. First, I think up until my step 4. I don't know what it was about the fourth that, or maybe beyond. We worked together, and I got what I needed from her, to be fair. And I was, at the same time, I was growing within myself culturally. I'd gone back out into the workplace. I'd come from a place of being kind of violated by a white male, my very first experience of work. So I came into recovery feeling very sceptical of white men, and very, you know, I was damaged, really. I was wounded. I hadn't worked for years. I hadn't had any kind of like real settled, you know, where I was living. I was living in a hostel. I'd always carried this thing with me about race and racism, and I think that part of my addiction was probably to suppress that type of stuff. So anyway, we worked together, and you know, there was a sponsorship relationship. But what I kind of worked out is this, and it came to me recently. I think as long as I was in the position of needing my sponsors, and the relationship was okay for them. But what I noticed was, as soon as there was a relationship and I started to grow or have an opinion or kind of start to kind of change and maybe appear to be kind of challenging something, I feel that there was there was trouble. You know what I mean? It felt like to be a black woman in recovery being sponsored by a white woman was like, yeah, it was okay as long as you weren't kind of stepping above yourself. I think that's what it feels like to me. That they could sponsor me as long as I didn't get too kind of like much an opinion or too well. And I remember like, so much so was I confused. I ended up having a transsexual sponsoring me, and he was a male to female at one point. And again, that kind of there was something about that relationship which was good.
That's the first 5 minutes.
About every sponsor. Pardon?
Just the first 5 minutes.
Thank you. So there was something about the there was something about feeling the kind of being told by this person. I almost felt that like, this is how you do it. Like, there was just something, and I think after a while I thought to myself, do you know what, you're not even a woman, kind of like thing. I don't know, you know. But I just felt there was a harshness there. It's interesting that I had this relationship, and I had a similar relationship. I had a relationship as a sponsor with a Brazilian woman. And I got that same thing again. I felt that she was kind of like, I don't know if it was a cultural thing, because I was Caribbean and she was Brazilian, and she was a little bit more kind of like, you know, socially acceptable. That there was almost this kind of, and she was in a relationship with a white male that was quite wealthy. I don't know if she was, I don't know what she did for a living, but, you know, it was questionable before she met him. That's just my opinion. And I think she had this kind of superiority I got from her. I didn't stay in that relationship with her very long, and I couldn't cope with her kind of like being black as well, but having this kind of edginess about herself. You know, she's black, but she lives in Swiss Cottage. She's in a relationship with a white male, and I just kind of felt that she looked down her nose at me a little bit. And funny enough, I bumped into her in a convention. I think it was last year in Florida, and she'd done exactly the same thing to me. I went up to greet her in a convention, and what she did is she kind of by-stepped to me and just kind of hugged this white man. And I was standing there thinking, wow, you know what I mean? Like, really? But it kind of sort of like reminded me of the reason why she didn't last very long as my sponsor, because I felt like she couldn't see me. And she did it in a real literal way. Like, I went, oh, hi, went to, you know, I thought she'd give me a hug. And she kind of just almost like thought, oh, hello, to somebody else. And so, well, it ain't me. That kind of hurt my feelings, if I'm honest. I felt a little bit like, wow, you know, that feels really quite painful, you know, to feel dismissed. So anyway, I had this kind of, yes, I've had various sponsors. I've had a relationship with a black female as a sponsor, and I've sponsored black women too, myself. And recently I was away and a black woman came up to me in Sweden. I was in Sweden at the weekend talking, and she came up, she said, oh my God, you've got to be my sponsor, you've got to be my sponsor, you've got to help me. And I was like, oh, whoa, you know, easy. But there was a desperation there to have the identification. And that's what I kind of sort of like. I didn't have that when I first got clean. I didn't have the luxury of being able to find someone who looked like me to help, to work, you know, work on my stuff. And, you know, thank God I'm still clean and sober today, which is testament to kind of like, you know, working through all those difficult feelings around different sponsors and not being too despondent or too disheartened and doing the work. I think my most difficult experience was probably with a European woman. I think French, recent experience, one of the last sponsors that I had, and I felt that she wanted to control me, and whenever I was kind of like, I travel a lot, and I have quite a kind of a good quality of life, I think she found this very triggering, that she was, and she'd say things like, oh, I'm giving up my time for you, and I'd be like, you're volunteering this time. It just felt a little bit like, I felt a little bit like she wanted to discipline me. And I lost my mum, and that was kind of the time. Before that, I started to get quite confused about her. I started to kind of put her in a position of power, because I needed what she had. You know, and that's really difficult when you feel that you need something from somebody, or you want something, and at the same time you almost feel like they want to control you to kind of give it to you, or if they give you an hour, I give, you know, she'd say things like, I give up my time for you. Just thinking, hold on a minute, you know, or, you know, I find you aggressive.
Wow.
Thinking, actually, I've got an opinion, it's not aggression. So there was this type of stuff that was coming up with this recent one, and my mum died, and I think what really kind of sealed it for me is that she wanted to end our relationship by text message.
Wow.
And when I returned from kind of doing all my mum's funeral and sort of stuff out, and I thought to myself, really? And I went back to Jamaica to do some stuff for my dad and to go and have a cruise. And I thought she was really put out by that. I think she just couldn't get it that a black woman could have a good life and have a white sponsor. And that sponsor to, like, witness a black woman doing well and progressing, and yeah, I think that left me quite bruised. I think I felt quite harmed by her in the end, even though she did some good work with me. I think she negated it all by the way she treated me in the end. I felt, and when she ended it, I felt that she was punishing me for not doing it the way she wanted me to do it. It was almost like I was her child. I wasn't her, like, sponsee. I was like, yeah, I put all this time and energy into you, and you want to go on a cruise. I was like, yeah,
that's the second 5.
And it's my life. How much time have I got left?
You've got 5 minutes left.
Yeah, so it was my time, it was my money, and I think I probably haven't really spoke a lot about how hurt I felt by that. For wow, you know, if I didn't do it the way you wanted me to do it. And she did let me go in the end. And, you know, man's rejection, God's protection. But it's interesting how long it took me to hold on to that relationship and not let go of it and not trust that as a black woman I'd get what I needed. And I think she took me as far as she was meant to take me. She took me to step 9. And to be fair, I'm doing really well after that relationship. I've got enough internalized resolve to be able to continue the work. But I've also had an experience that it's been left me quite kind of like, it's left me quite wounded. I feel quite upset that she thought it was okay to try and control me. and when she couldn't control me, she let me go. And I thought, she was on my social media as well, and I think that also triggered the hell out of her, seeing me having a life and having a good time. And maybe that was obviously a mistake, looking back. I have actually since taken her off of my social media, but I just thought that it was a little bit of a blurred boundary, that she could see my life, and she just wasn't able to empathise with me as a black woman. That's what I felt, especially around the death of my mother. I felt that she was, she said that, I lost my dad, and I wasn't able to be there for him, and I just thought, it's got nothing to do with me. I'm going to show up for my mum. So there's a lot of things that she did well. There's a lot of work that she did. There's a lot of hours that she put in. But I felt like it came with a little bit of a caveat in terms of like, I'm going to give you all my time. And she did do good work with me, and I'm doing really well at the moment from that particular sequence of step work. But I'm left with the residue, and at the moment I've not been able to kind of I've got a kind of a temporary sponsor, but I think she's not really kind of the solid sponsor that I need. I probably need another sponsor now, and that experience has left me thinking, wow, if you're black and you're doing well, I'm about to kind of start, re-engaging with my legal practice course. Is that going to intimidate white women? Are they not going to feel they can work with me? So I guess that's the way that I'm left feeling, and particularly in the SLA fellowships, I think there's a lot more kind of. And the other thing that happened to me recently was, you put a woman in a fellowship that I go to put her name down for sponsorship in the book. And after the meeting, I went up to her and I said to her, you're putting them up for. She goes, oh no, I was just seeing what was available, and I felt really hurt and let down by that as well. Because I think that because she'd seen me in the meeting, I was grieving, and it was like, I'm sponsoring but not you. So that happened to me very recently, that a woman, white American, I don't know if it's appropriate to say that, but it is my truth. And I just felt, and actually in that meeting I told them that I weren't coming back anymore, because as a black woman, when you raise your hand in the meeting, you don't see me. You just look straight past me and you pick the next person. So I said it's very difficult for me to recover in this meeting, and I'm not coming back. And I haven't been back. And that was the same meeting with the woman who put her name down for sponsorship, but when I approached her, she said, oh no.
She said no.
I'm just seeing like what people need. So it's been, I didn't even realise about it. I forgot about the last one that happened to me. And so at the moment I'm working with a woman who's Irish, which is as close to black as I can get right now. And
you've got 1 minute left to wrap up.
I'm thinking about who I'm going to work with next. Thanks.
Oh, Corinne, that was it was just amazing to hear. Are you okay to for us to kind of have a bit of a dialogue about it?
Yeah. Sure.
Yeah. I'll just share back. Actually, it was just really great to hear you, and thank you for sharing your experience, strength and hope around interracial sponsorship. And oh my gosh, it was actually really good to hear you, because it just kind of validated a lot of the stuff that I'd felt in meetings and the stuff that I'd felt around sponsorship and stuff like that. But kind of, sometimes you can question yourself about, is it really me, or is it them, or is it really racism? You're not really sure what it is, but actually hearing you talk about your story and the things that you've been through, it's just kind of validated for me how difficult it is to be a black person in recovery, and to kind of navigate all of this stuff. Congratulations as well on your 25 years as well. It's amazing, that you've been sober for so long, and the fact that you've been through so much. I'm really sorry to hear about your mum and stuff as well. I know that I saw some of the the stuff that you were sharing about it previously, and it was really good to see that even in the face of that sad thing that happened, that you were still able to go on the cruises and do all this stuff, so you were still able to celebrate your mum's life and still celebrate your life, even in the face of you know, something so terrible that happened, you know. So it's really good to see how recovery has worked for you, and how you've actually used recovery to create a life that is prosperous and abundant. And I love that. I love the fact that you're able to do that. And yeah, I found it really interesting, you talking about, you know, the white woman, the white people that sort of like, you know, they're okay to sponsor you as long as you kind of, you know, stay in your lane and just be a good Negro, you know, that sort of thing. You know, don't get too uppity, don't be an uppity Negro if you want me to sponsor you. But it's all kind of insidious, you know. And I can identify with that, actually. I can identify there is kind of that fear that, you know, you can come into recovery and deal with this stuff, but don't be too prosperous, don't be too you know, don't be too good at what you're doing, because it's just going to create a situation where then, you know, you feel like you can't really share and all of that kind of stuff. And you know, I've found sometimes it's difficult. I mean, I've chosen not to sponsor white people, actually. I've chosen not to sponsor white people now. I haven't sponsored a white person for a long time. I don't take, you know, I don't take white sponsees, and I couldn't be sponsored by a white person now either, because this racial sobriety stuff is such an important part of my recovery. I can't go through any type of steps without being able to speak my truth around this stuff, and that means that it has to be safe. And it doesn't mean that every black person that's in recovery is appropriate as well, because not everybody, as you know, is doing this work. But it is important for me to have somebody who's in recovery, who's a black person, who's doing this work, who's going to be able to hear me and understand and empathise, at least is willing, you know, to have a dialogue about these types of conversations. And so for that reason, you know, for me personally, it's not appropriate for me to either sponsor, not that I'm sponsoring people at the moment, because I'm doing so much service doing this stuff as well. You know, I haven't sponsored anyone for quite a while, actually. But back in the day when I was, and even now, if I did choose to sponsor anybody, actually now I'm co-sponsoring somebody with now in a minute. But I just can't do what, because even in the sponsorship relationship, even if I'm sponsoring somebody, for me it's a two-way relationship. So it's not just something where I'm going to just be available for somebody else and not get anything out of it myself. For me, sponsorship and stuff like that is a two-way relationship. So I have to be in a sponsor relationship with somebody where I think that I'm going to learn something from that person as well, and that dialogue has to be open. So if I can't share that sort of stuff with my sponsee or sponsor, then that person's not right for me to be working with them. And also, just from doing so much of this racial sobriety work, I've had so many of my sponsees and the people that I do outreach with and stuff like that say how much, you know, how valuable those conversations are, because of the stuff that you were saying at the beginning about, you know, not having anybody that looked like you to go through this stuff, to help you navigate the stuff around racism. And I think when you're in recovery and you're sharing a lot of your vulnerability, you're sharing your truth, you're trying to share your truth, you're trying to share these things, if you haven't got a space to share a lot of the racism stuff, it can be really painful. And for me, I know that when I first started exploring this stuff, I ended up kind of re-traumatizing myself with a lot of shame, because I felt ashamed. I didn't know where to share it. I didn't know where to take it. I mean, my sponsor at the time, the first sponsor that I had in recovery, she was great. She was really, really good, and you know, she was able to say, you know, she can't continue to sponsor me around all the racial sobriety stuff, obviously, because she didn't have the identification. And she empowered me to kind of go out there and, you know, find my community and work with my community to do this stuff. She was like, you know, it's time. You need to go and find your people. You need to go and do this. You know, and I was scared at the time, because I was, you know, I had a lot of my childhood trauma and stuff is around people that look like me. So it felt quite painful, but I also knew that if I really wanted to heal from this stuff, that I really did have to go out and start having more of these conversations with other black people and sponsor other black people and all of that kind of stuff. So yeah, so I really identified with what you were saying about the lady as well, saying about the woman when you went to Sweden, saying, oh, you've got to sponsor me and all the rest of it, because, you know, there is that immediate kind of, you know, this person is in recovery and she looks like me, and she's got 25 years sobriety. I mean, if I was there, I'd probably jump on the same thing. I'd be like, yeah, she's got sobriety, she's black, I want her to sponsor me as well. You know, I think it's important. I think it's important, and I think when you're also working with somebody that is also doing this racial sobriety work, it's such a gift, because it's like another dimension of recovery that is still very much a new concept. And you know, this is one of the reasons why, you know, I've done so much service, you know, in the recovery rooms around racial sobriety, and why I speak so openly about my own recovery and the whole importance of, you know, transforming what I've already learned in recovery into with a cultural context, so that people can really begin to understand and also be open to looking at that part of it, because it's an important part of our identity. The whole point of recovery is to kind of take the journey back home to yourself, you know, through sponsorship and stuff like that. So being able to have that dialogue with somebody that looks like you, and that can share back and stuff like that is you know, is so important. Yeah, and this you know, the stuff that you were saying around the controlling sponsor, I just find that really interesting, you know. But again, it's not. I'm not surprised by it, you know. And I think the thing is with racism is that it's so insidious. It's so insidious, and a lot of it is unconscious. You know, I think a lot of times in recovery that, you know, a lot of white people that are in there, they don't even know they're being racist. You know, I've had people come up to me and tell me that they've had white people say to them that they shouldn't really be talking about racism in the rooms, and it's just absolutely ridiculous. You know, it's just ridiculous that somebody would think that, you know, that somebody would have the guts to go up to you know, a white person would have the gall to go up to a black person and tell them that they shouldn't really be talking, you know, they shouldn't really be talking about it. It's just insane. Which is all the more reason why, you know, boundaried spaces for people of colour is important, you know, and having boundaries around the sponsorship conversations as well is just really, really important, really, really important. So from your perspective, like, what would be some of the things that you would suggest to a newcomer to recovery that's kind of looking for a sponsor that is in a situation maybe like you, where there's not really a lot of black people in the rooms? You know, what would you say to them around how to kind of manage that sort of situation?
I think for me now, looking back, and I think even kind of, I think it's a generic and specific, I would listen to the way they share, and listen to how they share, and listen to the things they speak about. Take more time than you would normally, maybe, to just listen to them, and just try and figure out kind of what wavelengths they are. And I'll say this: you want somebody who's more on the liberal end of the spectrum. You're not going to get someone who's going to be black, but if you can get someone who's white and liberal, and who reads The Guardian, and has some kind of consciousness about themselves, I think that would be a good starting point. If you go in there and you go with somebody who's very right-wing, who's very owning class, I'm not saying that they may not kind of want to genuinely help you, but you need to find someone who's a bit well-read, someone who's well-travelled, someone who, when you listen to them, they kind of sound like they've got some kind of consciousness about themselves and some kind of open-mindedness. They're honest, they sound willing. So if you was looking for someone and you was looking for someone to pick as a sponsor, pick someone that you feel on a deeper level, on a heart level, that this person's kind of got this level of realness that you're looking for.
Yeah.
And even if you didn't get it right, get out of it maybe as quick as you can. If you felt that it wasn't going well, because for me, with my last one, particularly the kind of the one that I felt was like, I think I allowed fear to allow me to allow her to kind of act out and end it, when really there was enough evidence for me to kind of realise that she was overstepping the mark.
Yeah, she wasn't right for you.
Yeah, so it is a process. I don't think that you should beat yourself up, like if you're new and you kind of get someone and then you realise, you know, for me, what I would probably say was get out as quick as you can.
If it's not working.
Trust the process. It's not working. And just be prepared to kind of listen and watch and just see what type of person, you know, the person is, and have another go at it.
Yeah. Yeah.
But for me, the liberal bit would be really important.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah. No, I agree.
Who do they speak to after the meeting as well? Who do they speak to? Do they speak to newcomers?
Mm.
Are they cliquey? Do they only speak to people who look a particular way from a socio-economic background, that have a particular type of job? Look do they say hello to you? You know what I mean? Are they warm? All the things, you know, watch them as they come in the door. What are they like around people? Do they speak to people, or are they in this little bunchy, cliquey set of people that pick each other when it's time to share and don't make eye contact and maybe say hello? They're the people I would stay away from.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I would also add to that as well, is that, you know, if there are things in your step work and stuff that you feel like you just really can't share with your white sponsor, you know, I would suggest to people to write a separate inventory on whatever the question is, but just keep a separate book that's got all your racial sobriety stuff in there, and then, you know, maybe have a fellow, like a buddy, like a racial sobriety buddy or a check-in person that you can sort of maybe speak to once a week or whatever, or somebody in your outreach circle that you trust, and then you can read that racial sobriety inventory to that person, and maybe you can have a dialogue about it or whatever. Because sometimes, as you know, as liberal as that white person is, they're not going to be able to give you the feedback and the identification that it's really important for you to be able to do that. So, you know, if you can find somebody, even if it's not necessarily a black person, you know, it's just another person of colour that is willing to do the dialogue, you know, if they might not be further along in the steps as you to be able to sponsor you, but, you know, maybe you can have a buddy relationship with that person and get, you know, you can read your step work to that person. You know, read it to your therapist. Do a separate inventory if you've seen a therapist. Read it to a therapist. You know, a therapist that you know, of the same background or whatever. You know, I think it's important to have these alternative ways to do it, because I think that, you know, I can never imagine, you know, writing a race inventory and reading it to a white sponsor, which I think would just re-traumatise me. I just couldn't do it. You know, and it's just not always appropriate. It's not appropriate for them to hear that stuff. You know, so I think it is important to you know, to be discerning about that sort of stuff. You know, and you know, that's a real act of self-love. It's an act of self-respect and an act of self-love to do that. So yeah, that's kind of what I would add, you know, to anybody that's thinking about that, and just to keep looking, like you said, Corinne, just keep looking. And don't be afraid to let the sponsor go if it's not working. It's okay, and people do it all the time. Let their sponsors go. You can still do it in a respectful way and still keep working the program. But thank goodness there are a lot more black people of colour that are coming into recovery now. And so hopefully the more of us that get clean and sober, and also start doing a lot of this racial sobriety work, it just means that, you know, a lot of us are a lot more aware of this stuff, a lot of the cultural stuff at this level. So that means that there are a lot more people available for sponsorship and for support and stuff like that. And there's loads of resources and stuff that, you know, that I'm obviously sharing on this platform, and you know, all the other work that I do that's hopefully going to help a lot more black people in recovery and stuff as well. So yeah, and I think it's really good. I think it's really powerful. Thank you so much for sharing your experience, strength and hope on that, Corinne. I really, really appreciate it. It's been really great. So I'm just going to just take the record button off, and then we can wrap up the meeting. So just give me 1 second.